Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Workforce Innovation Center's Services and Solutions session. That's a mouthful for this Tuesday afternoon. We're really glad to have you. I'm Audrey Treasure. I'm the Executive Director of the Workforce Innovation Center, and I'd like to introduce my colleague, Thanapat Vichachat.
And I'm Thanapat Vichachat. I'm the Senior Project Manager with the Workforce Innovation Center. To share our mission, the Workforce Innovation Center drives companies to adopt practices that empower employees, the community, and their businesses to thrive. We do this one company at a time in alignment to our vision that the Cincinnati region is a beacon of inclusion and engagement for employees, resulting in long-term financial success, innovation, and sustainability for its employers and thereby our community.
We've had the great fortune over the last 2 years since we were founded to launch a pilot in late 2020. We knew that we wanted to help companies adopt inclusive practices, but needed them to be grounded in the business case for doing so. And after we built out this consulting approach, we launched this pilot in late 2020, as I mentioned, in the height of the pandemic still, to try to understand what companies really needed and how our services could best meet those needs. We're really grateful for all of the companies listed here and some of the additional companies that we've been working with since we launched our pilot. We wanted to share with you some of the reasons why companies have engaged, and perhaps that's why you've joined us today. Some of our companies would like to increase their retention or find new sources of talent. They also want to hear from their employees and understand what's happening in their work lives as well as their personal lives. We have the ability to benchmark companies against industry peers, which allows you to understand how you rank in relation to others, and it can track your own progress over time. You'll learn more about that. Several of our companies are focused on becoming more diverse, inclusive, and most importantly, more equitable within their organizations. And as we have understood from the last several months, policies, practices, and benefits need to adjust for a modern economy. And so we're working with companies that want to improve those as a part of their long-term business strategy. We do this through a great team. So in addition to Thanapat and I, we've built out a consulting network of experts who are aligned in these various areas: HR policies and systems, talent strategy, diversity, equity, inclusion, and culture, focused on manager training and coaching and development of managers. That's so important to many teams, as well as recruitment and connecting with our great partner organizations, which Thanapat is going to tell you more about. We want to drive you to help adopt inclusive practices. We have them grouped in 11 key practice areas, and these practices have been evidence-based and proven in a variety of other settings. So we're fortunate in Cincinnati to have the Women's Fund of the Greater Cincinnati Foundation here. And over the last several years, they've done some groundbreaking work in the development of their employer toolkit. We've adopted those employer toolkit practices as a part of our approach, and we're grateful to partner with them. And then we're also grateful to partner with an entity called the What Works Cities Economic Mobility Initiative, where we've gotten the benefit of research from a company called the Behavioral Insights Team and Results for America. We've put these practices together to really be important, practical resources and recommendations that would help you solve your challenges. In addition, we've got this great network that I'll let Thanapat tell you more about.
So the Workforce Innovation Center proudly partners with a variety of organizations in the workforce and talent ecosystem. Our engaged employers can get recommendations and connections to our partners that can provide new sources of talent, services, or resources that can help them meet their business needs. Currently, we convene the community partners quarterly to share updates on our work and find better ways to collaborate. We are collaborating with Ohioans Job Center and engaging a small pilot group of 6 lead workforce development providers. Some of the goals of that pilot are to connect job seekers and partner employers, to develop shared job-ready skill competencies based on agency and employer guidance, to create preferential and expedited hiring from employer partners, and to help inform of incoming public dollars. After receiving feedback from the business community that the workforce and talent ecosystem space is confusing and hard to navigate, this ecosystem map was developed by us. It lists over 200 organizations ranging from workforce development, training services, leadership development, education, to business partnerships, and more. We're currently moving to version 3 of this map on a different platform, which will allow for additional search capability. We're constantly adding new partners and organizations outside of the workforce and talent ecosystem that can be of value and benefit to employers and thus their employees. This map is located on our website, workforceinnovationcenter.com. We are making this information publicly available to all, but for companies engaged with us, we are making strategic connections.
So now we'd like to get into a little bit more of the process itself. As I mentioned, we offer consulting services to help drive companies to adopt inclusive practices, and we want you to understand what's available and what you get to see as a result. There are 3 different options that we offer to a company: a policy and practice review, which allows us to inventory your policies and some of your practices as they exist, identify gaps, and then make some best-in-class recommendations. We've created our own employee survey that does a great job of connecting correlation and causation with some issues, or perhaps helps you identify new things that you didn't realize might be undergirding some of the problems that you're facing with your employees. You'll get to hear directly from your employees about their perception of your organization and then what impact your practices make on their lives within your work. Our third offering is an analysis of your workforce in a partnership with an entity called Working Metrics. We're able to baseline your information over time and compare you to industry averages as a part of a benchmarking process using Bureau of Labor Statistics data and US Census level data. This is also a great tool because it now allows you to track your progress and your metrics over time and can help you set goals for the future. All of these services have merits on their own with deliverables that you can derive value from as a standalone process. But if you group our systems together, we can get to our practice recommendations. We do a comprehensive look at those practice recommendations and then prioritize them based on a company's unique goals. And ultimately, we want to drive you to implementing those practices that could be most impactful for you and your organization. We've put together a little map to take you through what this process is, and we really do see it as a journey. The Workforce Innovation Center partners with our companies for a year so that we can help you in identifying these practices that can best meet your needs and then encourage you to achieve success over that time. So many of the issues that may be existing in your organization have not just happened overnight, and we know that solving some of those also won't be able to be resolved overnight. The same is true for just achieving goals. Maybe there's not an issue that you need to resolve, but your specific goals that you're hoping to achieve, and all of those things take time, especially when we're talking about people. So here's a look at what it takes to get involved in the Workforce Innovation Center. With every company, we begin with an employer interview. That's a deep dive that we ask you a series of questions, you and your leadership team, mostly operations folks, HR individuals, as well as C-suite executives, to help us understand what those pain points are or where you would really like to go. That employer interview is also available in a survey so that you can send it to other key leadership on your team and get their perspective about what your highest opportunities are to make impact. You then choose whichever services you've selected. You'll walk through the process of executing your component of that work. So for each of our different services, we have that outlined here in light blue. Working Metrics, you'll need to upload the data into the Working Metrics platform, and we will analyze it. In the policy and practice review, we request certain documents that you provide, and we analyze those. And in the employee survey, we put that all together for you, and you'll send it out to your team, and then we'll analyze the results of that. Based on any of the results from any 1 or 2 or 3 of those services, we'll do a deep analysis and then make recommendations. We'll schedule a meeting to do that. And sometimes we've been scheduling 2 or 3 meetings with the leadership of an organization to really understand what that looks like and why we're making the recommendations that we are. Following that meeting, we'll schedule a separate implementation team meeting. This is where we get into what are you going to do? How are you going to make this work? How will you measure whether it's successful or not? And what can we do to support you? And then we set up quarterly touch points where we help to be an accountability partner and hopefully keep you in line, troubleshoot on anything that you might have issues with, and provide additional resources or support as we're able to do so. So I'd like to spend a few moments then diving deeply on each of these services. To start, we're going to talk through the policy and practice review. Our initial step here, we've really broken it into two components. There's a policy review, and then there's the practices review, because you may have written policies, which are important, and they undergird your work. But we know that how those are implemented, what's put in practice, is what really makes a policy work or not. And so we think that there's merit and value in working with our companies to identify those two as separate items that are related and connected. We conduct a gap analysis of our policies that we are considering best in class, and we're making then targeted recommendations from that list on what you could do best in your new policies or your revised policies. We're comparing those also with our other Workforce Innovation Center clients, and so we're starting to keep track on a broader scale of what companies in this region are doing as we work with them and how they're making changes, how that affects their organization as a whole. We want your policies to be best in class, and we're going to make suggestions for your policies about how you could do that. We also take your policies through an assessment and score them based on accessibility and readability, particularly when we work with companies who may have a workforce that is that might be a frontline workforce or an entry-level workforce. We want to make sure that we are and that you are making your materials as accessible and available to them as possible. And I'll show you an example of what that looks like in a minute. Here is a snapshot of what our policy review looks like when we do that gap in analysis. So based on our list of policies, this company scored an 81% of the capture rate. They had 81% of the policies that we might recommend. So then we make the additions. These are the suggestions we believe would best support your company in having best-in-class policies. You'll see what this company included: conduct guidelines, workplace violence, anti-racism, a DE&I statement, and a policy and benefit surrounding gender-based violence. We're also aware of many policies that we might not have in our system yet. And the more that we learn from others who are practicing great things and putting policies into place that we think are best in class, then we're constantly innovating and improving what we can offer to businesses. Here's a little screenshot I mentioned of the analysis of the content we do of your policies. So what is the grade level that your policies show at when you analyze that text? Often, as we've seen in some of our best practices, a target level is 8th grade. This particular company had their policies posted at almost a 12th grade reading level. For this company, we provided an edited version of some of those to get them to that 8th grade level. They also score it based on reading ease. You'll see that the target there is a 60, and this company came in at a 27.8. General score we can do on readability as a whole. How can we bring you from a C level to a B level? And then what's the ability for this to reach the audience that you desire? Based on some of the tools that we use, our original policy review here was a 61%, and we were able to get it up with them to an 85%. Now, separately, we do a practice review, as I mentioned, and this is where we're trying to get with you, based on your goals, what are the highest impact practice areas you'd like to do a deep dive on. What we've listed here are the top 7 areas we're currently working with companies to address really fully. What's that introductory and onboarding process when people are coming into your organization? How are you recruiting and selecting people before they join? What professional development opportunities are you making available to your team members? And then how are you enabling their advancement through higher levels within your organization? That advancement and professional development can often go hand in hand, and you'll see that some of our companies are doing that right now. We're talking further too about performance evaluation, which feeds into that advancement category. We want to make sure that you're evaluating your folks in a fair and consistent manner, and you're looking at any disparities that might exist across different demographics. Talk about that in a moment. And then we're looking also at compensation setting and the benefit selection process that you're providing for your team. As we consider how that feeds together, our policy and practice review is really made up of those two components. And that when you put those two things together, that leads us to additional policy and practice recommendations centered in diversity, inequity, and inclusion. And we're focused also on economic advancement. We want to help you modernize your practices and your policies and then help you drive your business growth. I'll turn it over to Thanapat to share a bit more about our employee survey.
So our second service is the employee survey. And this survey really allows you to take the data a step further. One employer who has administered the employee survey communicated this was the most valuable service that gave a non-biased opinion of workers out of their business. Beyond providing additional context to other services you'll hear, such as working metrics, our employee survey is all about perception. By surveying your employees, you'll get a better understanding of their actual experience with your company. You will learn more about unmet needs they have, as well as how you can improve working conditions, thus increase their commitment and productivity. Questions you might ask yourself are, do your employees consider you an employer dedicated to improving their financial stability? Do they see you creating opportunities for growth, development, and advancement? So the employee survey also includes the following domains as seen here: work history, current work experiences, health insurance, PTO, compensation, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, promotion, advancements, and pay increases, and employees' personal status. So that could be financial, dependent care, housing, any barriers they might have to retaining that job. It's a very robust survey and takes a typical participant at least 20 minutes to complete. It is mobile friendly as well. Our comprehensive recommendations report summarizes the responses of your employees by identifying the themes and pointing out areas of concern as well as improvement. It provides you with actionable recommendations on how to improve the employee experience and ensure their perception matches your intention. This graphic is from a data analytics visualization tool, which gives a nice visual representation of a company's demographic data. It shows the breakdown across ethnicity, age, gender, and role. Filters and analytics can be applied to determine if there are any disparities in answers amongst groups of respondents, and those highlights are provided. We also aggregate survey results and share the comments, which provide a qualitative view and allow for employees to feel like their voice matters. Many engaged employer questions that we ask might be around compensation and benefits, as well as diversity, equity, inclusion. Many employers do have goals around diversity, equity, inclusion. So this is just a sample of some of those survey questions and responses. Employers, again, do get the full analytics report for all survey questions and answers. This next slide is an example of how we can filter survey responses to highlight any racial disparities. When looking at a company as a whole, the majority responded favorably on this question of, do you feel like you can show up as your full self at work? When we broke that down by respondents of people of color, the responses were more mixed. And then as we took a deeper dive into the Black and African American responses, you can see the results were even more mixed there.
Thank you, Thanapat. I'll say the analytics tool that we use at that employee survey, as Thanapat mentioned, does give us the ability to look at racial disparities, but we can also look at different levels. So we can look at what your manager said against what your frontline employees said, or we can look by gender or hourly pay rate. So we're really able to do some analysis there and give you additional information that might help you make decisions about what you'd like to do to support your folks moving forward. The third service offering we provide is called Working Metrics, and we use this tool in partnership with Working Metrics, which came out of the Aspen Institute. They wanted to focus on measuring what they refer to as job quality, and that's focused on jobs that make less than $60,000 a year, as well as job equity. What does the data tell us about opportunities for people of different genders and different races and ethnicities? The platform is designed to use your readily accessible data from your HR payroll system, and it accesses your wage data, the diversity data, and your benefits plan data. And then it breaks that down across a few different categories of retention, earnings, and job growth or headcount. This is also where we're able to benchmark you against your industry peers. As I mentioned before, you can use this to evaluate your progress over time. And the process that Working Metrics has created is designed to be easy, fast, and secure. So looking then at what results are created from you uploading your data. The first thing that they provide is what they call a social impact scorecard. And this is looking at those employees who make less than $60,000 a year. There's a star rating system that's created from the scores of all of the various elements on the Working Metrics scorecard. So in this example over here, I hope you can see my mouse. I guess I'm not sure if you can. We measure you in a series of different categories. Overall, that's the aggregate amount. Job growth, which is the same as headcount, retention, earnings, and then company-wide retention. So that's for everyone above, including those under $60,000 are included here. The blue line shows one company's performance against this gray bar, which is the industry average. So a company will select which industry using their NAICS code they'd like to be compared to using the Bureau of Labor Statistics data. And that data is what we use to generate this report. And this one specifically focused on those under 60,000. Working Metrics also analyzes the benefits that you provide to your employees based on health insurance, retirement, and paid leave. So they look at whether you have a qualifying plan, yes or no, and then what that standard is for that same industry. Provide some really important information about your workplace and specifically that population. And the reason we've selected to work with Working Metrics is because part of our approach is focused on economic mobility for employees. Additional graphs that you're able to see and in the Working Metrics platform, these are interactive when you get inside, is looking at your data by gender. You'll see here it's showing two genders, male and female. However, the Working Metrics platform also captures non-binary, transgender, and those who might identify as not provided. And they use this data of your company, which is on the left-hand side, benchmarked against what they use as the US census level data on the right-hand side. And this is the baseline data that you see for your organization when you start working with Working Metrics. So you're able to compare yourself to your industry at a point in time 3 years ago, and then yourself to yourself, because we think it's important, and Working Metrics thinks it's important that you're able to match your own progress over time, as well as compare yourself to industry peers as a whole. So you'll see that this company here is indexing higher for women than men against the industry average. And that's true both at their point in 2017 and then again in 2020. On the right, and again, I can't do it justice here in this slide, but you're able to dig into some of the percentages as it relates to each gender represented here in these three categories. So when you look at job growth, that's the head count. We see that this company did increase in size from 330 employees to 372, and it breaks that down to say, where did that growth occur? Men, women, overall. We do the same analysis based on retention, and then we also look at earnings, and we're able to see that this snapshot again is over that 3-year time period, and so we can really analyze what is happening with your workforce. We're able to do the same thing by race and ethnicity. So these categories represent the EEOC guidelines. Again, on the left-hand side is the company itself, benchmarked against the industry. This particular industry, and in many of our circumstances, this US Census level data has a significant amount of not provided, which you see represented here. And the company is able to compare itself to itself at 3 years ahead in the future. With this additional detail, you'll see that they didn't have a large number of they saw a decrease in employees in these categories of Asian, Native American, and Native Hawaiian. And so that's why, for example, on this company, if those, however many people left, their job growth or headcount number is looking like they went below where they were 3 years prior. We're able to analyze this ourselves before we bring it back to the company. And we've often had some really great conversations with companies then about what might have happened over the period in time where we had this baseline data, so that we can understand and they can understand themselves a little bit differently. I mentioned also that the Working Metrics platform allows a company to track itself quarter over quarter. And so you'll see this is a company that put in a series of historical data each quarter at a time to look at those trends in a different format. If they're tracking the race and ethnicity of their employees, you'll see here that that's broken down into Black, African American, white, and then we're doing gender on this one as well. So we can cross-reference the demographics and take a look at the trends over time. And then we're able to help a company if they set specific goals around if they'd like to recruit more women or they'd like to recruit more people of color. As they move forward, we're able to use this platform to track that progress and how they've done. And we also work with them to track other progress metrics outside of the Working Metrics platform. So that's a bit about each of our service offerings. We want to take a moment and pause and share with you a video of one of our employers and some of the great things that they are doing as a result of working with the Workforce Innovation Center. I'll stop sharing and my friend Spencer is going to bring that up for us.
The Workforce Innovation Center is a consulting practice where we help employers to adopt inclusive practices that can help solve business challenges and really help companies meet their goals. If your company approached the Workforce Innovation Center, we would have an inquiry meeting just to hear the challenges that your company might be facing. We would assess and present our consulting service offerings, which are a policy and practice review, an employee survey, and an analysis of workforce data. From there, we would kind of analyze that data and provide recommendations to the company and work with them towards an implementation plan so that they could take action on those.
The economy is changing. The workforce is changing. People's desire for work and value at work is changing. And we want to give companies information about how they can modernize their policies to be appealing to their workforce. That's something that companies need to work towards, and we can help with the tools and data to help them do that. But companies also really have to put in some work to be the company they desire to be.
So we decided to work with the Workforce Innovation Center because we struggle to retain and hire top talent. We're growing year over year, and access to skilled labor is single-handedly holding us back. Within the 9 months that we've been working with the Workforce Innovation Center, I think the most valuable thing that we did was the employee survey. It gave us a non-biased opinion of what our employees thought of our workplace practices. We learned that around 50% of our employees didn't see any career growth or didn't understand what they needed to do in order to get promoted. Imagine how that might impact retention.
That survey really was about what your childcare needs look like, what your transportation needs look like. Are you on the correct shift? We realized that we need to be maybe a little more innovative on our scheduling. Maybe it's buying them a bus pass. Maybe we can take it out of the Monty pocket to give them that monthly pass. They were very grateful that a survey was put out with the ability just to start an open line of communication. All the feedback I got was, hey, this is a good thing. These questions were great.
A lot of businesses say our employees are our greatest asset. And if you really truly think that, then you ought to be doing the work to ensure that you're taking care of them, that you're listening to them and reacting to make sure that they're working in the best possible environment.
Our job as leadership is the people. Without the people, we don't have a business.
When you're going through these workforce issues, you kind of feel helpless, but you don't have to be because there's resources to help you. And the Workforce Innovation Center has been a really great resource for us to help implement better changes.
I said, thank you, Spencer. I was muted. I'm going to continue to share my screen and walk you through some slides to talk a little bit more then about what we do on once we've done those services. So you'll see Molly and Ronnie both spoke about that at Monty. They got the data and the feedback from their employee survey, and they chose all 3 services and then have been charting a path forward based on that data to try to achieve their goals. So in talking about what's next then, we put together for you a comprehensive set of practice recommendations, and then we prioritize them based on your goals and what we've heard you say is most important to you. I'm going to talk about that a little bit further. We always want to build upon a company's existing practices. So there's no company that we work with that is horrible, right? We're working with a number of really great companies who already see the value in investing with their workplace and want to try to solve problems to become an even better company and to support their employees at a greater depth. So we build upon what a company is already doing. For this company, one of the things that we're proposing they do is enable additional advancement opportunities. And we want to acknowledge that they already have a series of things in place that are positive. They offer an education assistance policy. They have an orientation program that informs them about the company's values, their mission and history to get them connected. They've already defined what their internal promotion process is, and they provide yearly performance evaluations. Those are great. When we put together then a set of plans for a company, then we consider what they're currently doing and what we think might complement that best. So here's just a snapshot of what we might recommend. In that create opportunities for advancement category, 2 additional recommendations we could make are develop a specific internal career pathway and offer intentional career guidance, or provide training to your frontline managers and supervisors in order to create those opportunities for advancement. What you see here on the slide is that, like I mentioned, just a snapshot. What we provide for you in our recommendations report is a bit of a white paper. It is a detailed set of information and suggestions for how you might make this possible, any of these specific practice areas, and they're prioritized, as I mentioned before. Thanapat?
Thanks, Audrey. So we do provide additional resources as complementary solutions. So services like the employee survey can help inform when we provide connections to these additional resources. So often life circumstances can cause employees not to perform well on the job or behave abnormally, which may result in job loss or loss of productivity. Questions around housing instability and domestic violence are asked in the employee survey to help determine if people may need additional support. We know affordable housing is an issue in Cincinnati, and housing insecurity is a concern for many low to middle income range workers. However, there are resources for people who have been affected by COVID and are behind on bills. So for instance, CARES Act dollars administered through Hamilton County Jobs and Family Services and their partners are available to assist with back rent, mortgage, and utility assistance. We've also seen a small number of responses from employees who have completed the survey that have indicated, yes, I'm experiencing violence in the home, or no, I prefer not to answer. So we've built into our process to pass along resources like Women Helping Women, YWCA, and legal aid to employers as an additional support for their employees.
We're capturing information from companies. Thanapat shared that housing and intimate partner violence as 2, but there are some other areas, and you saw from our workforce ecosystem map that there are other really big issues, societal issues that don't just affect people at home, but show up at work. Addiction is another one. Childcare needs is a huge one for people still, or schooling needs. And so in addition to the work that we're doing individually with companies, we're trying to help build those resources by topic area and how they can best help and support business needs. So we went through the services that we provide, how we get to solutions in terms of the recommendations that we make, and then really where we feel like the rubber meets the road is about implementation. How can we best help a company then to put into practice the things that might be most meaningful for them? So what we do is share with them a document to help them work through the process that they might need to determine how they're going to take some of the best practice recommendations that they want to put in place and make it happen. Just a little screenshot of the worksheet we've put together, which is if you're going to enable advancement opportunities and your primary focus is on developing internal career pathways and career guidance, then let's talk about who's going to need to be a part of that. Individuals and departments. What outcome do you hope to achieve and what measures are you going to use? How will you capture data and determine whether you're being successful? What time frame will you need to put this in place? What are the key milestones for you? And then how are you going to communicate this and roll this out to your team? So we work with a company to really narrow then from the prioritized practice recommendations, what a company can implement. Here's some examples of what we're doing with companies right now. Based on our recommendations with them before, they're identifying new sources of talent and broadening recruitment strategies. So they're making new partnerships, for example, with the Cincinnati Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the African American Chamber of Commerce. Those are a couple we've made connections with recently. There's others like in the workforce ecosystem space, like Cincinnati Works and the Urban League and Santa Maria Community Services, our Cincinnati Compass, which works with immigrants and refugees. We're able to help connect employers to the resources of those organizations and try to help them make a plan moving forward. The measuring workforce trends related to demographics, we're really able to dig into that with the Working Metrics tools. And if Working Metrics doesn't provide, say, the detailed analysis on things like who is getting promotions and advancement opportunities, then we're working with companies to help them look at their own data and see, well, hey, it looks like we've only been promoting white people. We haven't been promoting people of color. Let's talk about how we can make sure we have a more equitable approach to helping people advance within our organization. As Dana Pet mentioned, we're connecting employees with resources to keep them housed. And one of the reasons I think this is really important is that we have this robust social service ecosystem. Many organizations are working with individuals to help them get jobs or find childcare or other needs. But there are plenty of people who are working, and they are working all the time. They may not have time to access the resources out in the community. So if we're able to work with an employer and bring those resources in through you, especially knowing that employers are seen as one of the most trusted entities where people get information that they believe to be true, then we hope what we're doing is bringing these resources to new populations who would not otherwise know about them or have access to them. And that housing piece is one. We talked several times about this advancement and promotion pathways, which is one we're excited about because ultimately we want people to be able to move up into their own be economically mobile, and so that they can achieve the life that they want to lead and thrive. And as well as you as a company can have the teams that you need in order to be successful. We provide quarterly support, as mentioned, so we prioritize with you what your metrics, timelines, and key individuals are to put your plans into actions. We connect you to any of those relevant partners or other resources to help you reach those goals. We schedule these quarterly meetings to serve as that accountability partner and a troubleshooter. And we're in the process of establishing working groups of our existing companies who want to network together and provide support and resources to one another. Additionally, we're able to connect you for deep work that might be outside of the scope of our analysis, assessment, and recommendations phase. So we have a few examples here. One company wants to do a very strategic diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic plan, and that's outside of the scope of our basic services. However, we've got this great network of independent consultants who can do that work, and we're able to serve as a bridge between a company and these independent consultants to help you get to what you need. We're also doing that, for example, with a company's bonus structure. Is it still competitive, is what a company wanted to know. We're helping them establish training programs with the right providers who can help companies to do that, and then supporting the development of advancement plans with specific competencies and role levels so that employees know what they need to be successful at work. So in summary, that's the center's approach. We really want to be a one-stop shop where we can give you detailed information, customized information about your own workforce, perhaps shed light on some things that you maybe didn't know about your people, and help you create some plans to move forward, making positive results for your own company and the people that you employ. The Workforce Innovation Center does this as a fee for service. And so what that looks like is a 1-year consulting engagement from the time that we first sign on with you. For every company we work with, that includes that initial employer interview and a survey. Every company receives the detailed, customized practice recommendations. You get that implementation planning support and the quarterly progress support. So that happens regardless of which specific service that you choose. And then we would determine pricing based on your company size, whether or not you're a chamber member. So Cincinnati Chamber members receive a 15% discount, and the number of services that you select. If you only choose one service, that's full price. If you choose 2 services, we'll discount that at 10%. 3 services, we discount at 15%. And we'll create this custom proposal for you to help you meet your needs. We can do additional things like focus groups. We've done that for some other companies. And we're happy to talk with you about your goals and your priorities so we can get there. So we've left some time here at the end of this discussion because we wanted to be able to answer any questions that people might have. We can do that in the chat box or any other place. We're certainly happy to be a resource to anyone as much as we can, and we want to help you solve some problems and help this community to really be a thriving community where businesses and people and their families can thrive. So I see Representative Ingram has asked a question to the panelists. Yes, you may receive a copy of the presentation. We're happy to share that with you after this meeting today. If there are any other questions, please put them in the chat and we'll be happy to answer them. Unfortunately, Spencer is the person that has the hip music to play during downtimes. I don't have that teed up, so we won't be able to have any mood music in the background, but we're happy to answer any questions. I will go ahead and put our contact information in the chat. So Sarah asked a great question. Are you seeing an increase in retention? And I would say that the time frame that we have with companies so far hasn't been long enough to determine whether or not some of the things companies have put in place have been successful at increasing retention. That is what we hope to do and why we really felt like we needed a longer time frame to work with companies. So we set this process up to be a year-long cycle. And so that's what we hope to see. We think in about 3 months, we would probably have some of the feedback about whether or not that's been successful. Because we also consider the time from when they start implementing, not just when they start working with us. Thank you, Sarah. Oh, there's a separate area called Q&A. We have been working, thank you. How many companies have we worked with? We worked with 15 pilot companies, and then we've been in conversations with about 30 other companies about their different needs. And we're working on proposals for several right now. This is maybe one of the more awkward ones I've done since we're on a webinar and it's not the same as a Zoom, so we can't, or I mean a meeting, so we can't see everyone. Great question in the Q&A. What is the most requested service? Of all of the services that we've worked with to date, or all the companies we've worked with to date, everyone has selected the working metrics service. They have all wanted to be able to benchmark themselves against industry peers. And to be able to track their own progress over time. One aspect that I think is interesting about that work is that it's not often that a company is very surprised about what their own demographics are. Many companies are aware generally of what the racial ethnic breakdown is, what that looks like, say, on the shop floor versus the management, or what the gender diversity is within an organization. But when you're able to compare yourself to an industry peer and you're able to see your own progress over time, I think what that does is put into action, put a priority on what actions you should take if you want your organization to look different. Several of our companies have approached us about trying to solve problems related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. They're focused on wanting to have a more diverse workforce, which is great, and we want to help connect them to resources to find new sources of talent. That could be people of color, that could be veterans, that could be people of neurodiverse abilities or other diverse abilities, that could be immigrants and refugees, and we want to do that. We want to help companies find new sources of talent, and through that ecosystem, we're able to do that. But at the same time, we're also working with companies to actually be equitable and inclusive organizations, because we can't just turn on a pipeline to a new set of talent and not change. And part of our work we really see as an important part of our work is to help companies modernize themselves to be a desirable workplace, an inclusive workplace, a place that focuses on how we can create belonging for people at work. And so at the same time where we might be helping a company to find new sources of talent, we're also suggesting leadership programs to build the cultural competency of the leaders within your organization. Or some of our companies on their own have undertaken things like implicit bias training or other kinds of diversity training. And we're very supportive of that. We want companies to continue to grow and evolve in order to create those inclusive and equitable workplaces. So thank you for that. Another attendee has asked, it seems like now is a great time to engage with the Workforce Innovation Center coming out of pandemics and layoffs. Is that true? Well, we think it is a great time for you to work with the Workforce Innovation Center, and we would love for you to do that. Since we have a minute, I'll tell you about our approach. Originally, the Workforce Innovation Center had decided we wanted to use all of those services I shared with you today, that any company who would work with us would have to do all three of those services. So we could provide the most robust analysis of your organization, and then make the highest and best recommendations to you possible. So our original plan was to launch our pilot in March 17th of last year. And you all might recall, I'm pretty sure that is the day before Governor DeWine placed the stay-at-home order. And so we changed our plans and we had to adjust. We spent last summer really trying to figure out how could we make our consulting services accessible to companies who want to be better? And that's for their employees, say at the front line, at the lower end of their pay scale. And pandemic made very clear the kinds of problems that people are dealing with, from an increase in domestic violence to hunger, to housing insecurity. And companies could be a part of the solution, and many companies want to be part of the solution. And many companies also focus very much on the racial division and the racial disparities that exist in this country, and particularly the murder of George Floyd, and today being the anniversary of his murder, reminds us of what occurred last summer and how that really drove societally folks to change. And many company leaders asked what they could do. And that's what we really tried to put in place as we spent some months retooling our approach. We broke up our consulting services so they'd be accessible for companies who maybe say, I can't do all of those things right now, but I could analyze my workforce. Or I can't do all these things right now, but I'd like to do the employee survey. And really our request of companies then too is, we don't want you to just take this analysis and let it sit on a shelf, but what could you do to adopt one inclusive practice? So what we're finding in our conversations with companies right now is that, yes, this is a time where companies are saying we want to do and be more. It's a great time to work with the Workforce Innovation Center, and we'd love to help you meet your needs and your goals. Yeah, we do believe it would help companies get a fresh start as a result of the pandemic. This is the end. We're still dealing with it, but how we can help to support you as you move forward. I don't think we have any additional questions in the chat or the Q&A. I've shared my email address and Thanapat's email address in the chat. Please email us individually if you do have any additional questions. We'd be happy to schedule a time to talk with you further about your unique needs or what you might be able to accomplish in working with us. And we're really grateful that you joined us today. Thank you so much for being here.